It's time to accelerate. Hi, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Join me as I host conversations with the leading experts in sales, marketing, sales automation, sales process, leadership, management, training, coaching, any resource that I believe to help you accelerate the growth of your sales, your business, and most importantly, you. Hello, and welcome to Accelerate. I'm really looking forward to talking with my guest today. Joining me is Jack Kosakowski, who's the global head of social sales disruption at Creation Agency. So, social sales disruption? I'm not sure what that is, but I love the sound of it. So it's definitely something we need to talk about. Jack, welcome to the show.
Yeah, buddy. So, social sales disruption. Let me sum that up. So, what I do is I come in and I take traditional mindset and I take it over the chasm, and then your sales process comes with that mindset and shifts, so they kind of align together. Mindset shift, sales process shift.
All right. Well, I think we're going to have to dissect that a little bit. So let's start. We'll start first and say, okay, what's Creation Agency? But tell us before you get to what Creation Agency is, because I know it's a relatively new employer. Tell us a little bit about you, how you got to this point in your life.
Yeah. So, been in sales for about 11 years, 12 years. Been in and out of different industries. Started my first sales job was actually selling pay-per-click Google AdWords. And it was when nobody knew what Google AdWords was. So you'd call them and they'd go, what? What's Google, right? So that was interesting. Did that for about a year and a half. Had some fun. And then I went into online education. So I was the assistant director of admissions for an online nursing school. That was interesting. Which is a fancy word for, selling online degrees, right?
Right.
And I worked with master's students, BSN students that were looking to go into the master's program. So it was kind of interesting. And then I went into manufacturing sales at a company called Interlake Mechalux, where I was in outside sales for, a little less than 2 years, selling automation warehouse equipment. Let me tell you, one of the sexiest, most innovative industries you'll ever be in. And I'm being joking about that. And then I, got an opportunity to go into SaaS. So I was with Acton Software, which in my opinion, best marketing automation platform on earth. And, I really got I had a great experience there. Had a lot of success, went to President's Club and, did all the things that you're supposed to do, was one of the top reps there. But one thing I really learned about there was I really got to understand marketing, because I never, in my sales career before, had ever really put any weight on marketing. Kind of always thought it was just kind of a waste of time, right? Like, marketing doesn't really do much for you. And when I went to Acton, I had to sell this big fancy, technology that was sold to CMOs, directors of marketing, people that had been marketing for a really long time, and I had no marketing background. So I really had to understand marketing, and that's how I got in, truly deep into social selling without even knowing that that's what I was doing, because I was actually trying to learn marketing so that I could have a conversation with the CMO. One time when I first started, a CMO told me, you're trying to sell me a $30,000 technology, and you don't know anything about what I do. You know nothing about my day-to-day. And it really kind of opened my eyes, and I, went all in on the marketing side. And the next thing I know, I was using social in my sales process, and I was making the least amount of calls. Some quarters of all the reps that were there, 80 to 100 reps, and getting the most amount of revenue. So then I'm like, I'm on to something. So started documenting it, putting on content, putting into processes, and hard work pays off. And now I'm at the Creation Agency.
What do they do?
So Creation Agency is the second largest marketing automation agency in Europe, and they have 3 offices over there. So they're global. They work all over Europe, and they do digital marketing. It's really, really high-level marketing automation stuff from top of the funnel all the way down. Work with 9 of the Fortune 50, I believe is the number. So big companies, doing big things, doing very innovative things, very forward-thinking, disruptive things, to really help companies stay ahead of the curve. Some we have to catch up to the curve, but really it's about I like to use the word disruption. I know maybe it's an overused term, but really doing things that nobody else is doing yet, right? And doing them first.
Okay. So, disruption. What are you disrupting? What's your job? What do you do?
So typically, right now, what you have in a lot of companies is, you have digital marketing that is they're catching up with or they're staying ahead of the curve with. But what's happening is sales is not staying ahead of the curve with anything, right? You still got people, selling like it's 1980, maybe even 1960s, right? What's the ad guy? I can't remember his name, but
well, in the 80s, they were selling the same as they sold at the turn of the century before that, so things hadn't changed much.
Yeah. So with the digital shift, right? Marketing is doing a lot more things, and sales has got to be able to understand, what marketing is doing, where these channels, all these channels are happening. Buyers are here, they're there, and how do we take, marketing data and customer data, and from a sales perspective, how do we use these channels to, effectively communicate with more people on more channels with more of the buyer data personalized, and how do we take that, infuse that into our, sales process that we're doing, I'll say traditional sales process, right? How do we infuse that into the sales process using phone, email, and then using social as the value piece between each and every one of those, right? And how do we use the social to give and add enough value to our buyers, right? To stay visible, stay valuable, and help us to get more conversations, more opportunities, better buyer experience, and ultimately is more revenue, right?
So, what is the role of social in providing that value?
So the way that I look at social is social is a way to get connected with your buyers on a personal level, right? And really be able to understand your buyers more than just sell them. Majority of salespeople, if you go through their email inbox, go through their sent box. I dare you to find one email that's anything but asking the buyer for something, right? Can we get the next meeting? Can we get to the decision maker? Can I get the contract? There's not a lot of value in sales right now because honestly, phone and email are pretty tough, to add value on outside of, selling, right? Solving a business problem. But you got to do more for buyers now. And that's where social comes in because you can actually help buyers be better at their day, right? You can leverage content to educate them about their industry. You can leverage content to communicate on how you could solve a business problem. You can use content to show your thought leadership, your expertise in an industry. And there's a lot of other ways you could do it. You could share a webinar, right? You can advocate and share your network with your buyers because at the end of the day, people, anybody could buy technology, right? So it's so competitive. What else do we have that could give us the value that's more than a technology? Because a buyer, when they're in the sales process, they not only have to be sold on the technology or the product, they got to be sold on the salesperson and the people that are around the technology as well. Social allows us to be able to do that.
But certainly social is not the only way.
The only way
to be able to demonstrate, because really what you're talking about is saying at the end of the day, if products are fundamentally perceived to be similar, right, well, let me just spew this out here for a second. If products are fundamentally perceived to be different, then there's intangibles are really going to be the basis on which customers make a decision. I mean, if you're selling a marketing automation system and that, as far as the customer is concerned, hey, you guys are all basically the same, but I want to buy from Jack because, Jack was able to do several things that I perceived that I felt some value from. But those don't all have to flow through social.
Oh, no, it's in tandem, right? I mean, you've got to be doing everything right. When I think of social, and I'm explaining it in this way because I want to keep it as simple as possible, right? But when I think of social is I think of it as one of the many pieces of the pie, right, to add value. When you're on the phone with a customer, of course you should be adding value on the phone as well. But typically, when you're on the phone, you don't get a lot of time to spend with customers to just chit chat, right? So typically, you're spending your time adding value from a business perspective, right? You're listening, analyzing and fixing a business problem. And that's where you've got to have the good core of sales, right, in order to ever sell anything. And then email, you can use email as a value tool as well. It's a little bit tougher. But really, I just see that the competitive advantage right now is social, right? There's just so many creative ways to stay visible and valuable to your buyer outside of just selling them like you're typically doing on the phone or email.
Sure. I mean, right. I just want to make sure it didn't want to leave the impression for people, especially people listening to the show, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're running a small company or you got a sales team, is that there's still multiple channels for which you can provide and deliver value to your prospect. But what it requires that you really be deliberate about it. You have to be thoughtful about the fact that you have a requirement every time you interact with a prospect. If you're not delivering something of value, they're going to stop giving you their time.
Absolutely. It's just another way to strengthen, the relationship with the buyer, stay buyer focused, right? And, there's so many ways to use it, but really filling time gaps too. I mean, I can't tell you how many times, you have a meeting, you're trying to control the sale, you got a lot of decision makers. What do you do in that 2-week gap, right? To stay valuable and visible. Just many variety of ways to do it. But yes, at the end of the day, the core of sales is the phone, right? Or an in-person meeting, however you get that. That personal one-to-one touch. And you just want to have more resources. And the more resources that you have, especially if they can add value, is where you're going to get the competitive advantage and really get even deeper connected to that buyer from a business and personal perspective.
All right, so let's sort of dive down a little bit, because I got an email today from a company that's advertising a webinar and an ebook, and they were talking about cold calling's dead, and that's a pretty well-known company, and they talked about how you use LinkedIn so you don't have to make cold calls, but you can warm them up. And the thing that I always sort of chuckle when I get email from this company is that, they put out great content, but they don't eat their own dog food. And I get calls from their salespeople, and I should never get calls from their salespeople because I'm not their ideal customer profile. So how are we going to cross that chasm, as you talked about before, not in the sort of marketing sense, but how are we going to bridge that gap between people knowing, on one hand, what the best practices are, but getting salespeople to actually start using these social tools to warm up these cold calls to really help their prospecting in a meaningful way?
I mean, it's just like anything else, right? I mean, I think there's two to three components of that. One is, sales reps have to take the bull by the horns and be proactive versus reactive, right? Sales is something that never stops evolving. There's always new ways of doing things. There's always, competitive tools. So, you do have to take trying to think of the word. So you do have to take a little self-evaluation, right? And do some self-education, because it is your quota. It's nobody else's, right? The company gives you a job and they tell you, here's what you have to do. You have to create this much revenue in this amount of time, right? A lot of times they're not going to give you, or they don't have the resources to give you all the tools to teach you what you need to know to be successful. Now, with that being said, then there's the responsibility of the company, right? And I think social, social's not easy. There's a lot of channels. There's a lot of, every channel has different ways of doing things. Or, you have success on one channel doing something differently than the other. And I've almost seen lately that social, because of this lack of training, right, has actually backfired, like you're talking about. There's actually people that, talk about this stuff that have never carried a bag. They've never had a dollar amount behind them. And they're looking for the easy way out. And that's how they're using social, and they're using it wrong, just like the example you gave. So I think, self-education, training, and then, evolving and staying in the know. Because one thing about social that makes it so tough is that right when you think you got something figured out, either a new channel comes out or the channel that you think you have figured out changes something. So you've really got to make social, one of the focus areas of, many things in sales.
Okay, but if you're a sales leader or a CEO and you're saying, gosh, how do I really embed social effectively into my sales process? What's the first step they should go through to do that?
Well, first off, I would, do a little research, right? If I'm a sales leader, I should probably know what my buyers are doing and where they're living, right? So, learn social on your own a little bit before you bash it. I see that too much in sales leadership. It's like, there's no value in social. Well, that's great, but you know what? Your opinion would be a lot more valid if I could find you on LinkedIn to tell me that, right?
Okay, but assume for a second that it's a sales leader that actually has a LinkedIn profile and maybe has a Twitter account and shares content occasionally. But they're sort of stumped as like, okay, how do I train these 10 people on my sales team to effectively use social, meaning to do the right thing with social? I mean, what's the first step?
First step is you call me, my number, no, I'm just joking. Do some research on people in the industry that are, that have good content that you can know what they're talking about, and reach out to them and have a conversation, right? If I'm not the master of something, I reach out to people that I can see that are doing things and making waves in the industry of where I need help. So that's the first thing I would suggest, right? And then the second piece to that is, make a commitment. Do you really believe that your sales team would be effective using social, or are you still in the traditional mindset that it's a waste of time, right? So you've got to really make a mindset shift first, that you want to make a commitment to this and that you think that this resource would be good for your sales team. And I would highly suggest doing some very heavy self-education, looking at case studies. There's a lot of case studies out there, and figure it out on your own to see if there's a value there first, and then reach out to somebody who actually knows what they're talking about and is actually in the weeds doing this stuff and getting a result.
Yeah, or they could do something like listen to this podcast, because I've had you and multiple guests on about social selling, give you some good perspectives on. I think really the first thing is that making the leap for many sales leaders is hard, because you said they think it's sort of a waste of time to some degree, and it's because they're unfamiliar with it. And so it seems to me the first step has to be is you have to have some sort of bite-sized piece you can chew off that you're going to be able to integrate into your sales process and see some positive results.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is, I always say this: why is a sales leader deciding, where they're going to connect with their buyers? Do a survey. Ask your buyers what channels they're on, right? Have conversations with your buyers. What do you think? Would it be effective? Do you think, you would enjoy our sales team sharing your content and giving you more, visibility? Get in the weeds with your buyers. They'll tell you everything you need to know of what you should and shouldn't be doing.
Yeah. So, to clarify, maybe one of those first steps is have your salespeople go on LinkedIn discussion groups and engage in some conversations, not sales conversations, but conversations with prospective buyers that are there.
Yeah, yes, but that could be dangerous as well, right? Because that could do more harm than good if they don't know what they're doing, right? Which you see a lot of.
Well, yeah, again, but you're right. They just do need to be trained to make sure they understand what the role is when they're there. They're not there to sell. They're there to have conversations.
I saw this at Acton, right? We, didn't have formal social selling training when I got there, and we had some disasters on LinkedIn groups, right? Where you can't delete that stuff. So
so tell people, what did they do that was wrong? What were the disasters?
So essentially, you go into a group and people ask, for their help. If you go to these LinkedIn groups, there's a ton of people that will just open it up to say, hey, I'm looking for this type of solution, right? Which one would you suggest? And when you get into these LinkedIn, messages, there's a lot of people that don't tell the truth about a solution, right? But the last thing that you do is go on there and start an argument on LinkedIn, right? Especially if you don't really know what you're talking about. So there was a couple new reps that, made some claims and that weren't true, and we couldn't get it deleted off of LinkedIn, right? So it just makes everything we do on social is a footprint, and a lot of them you can't get rid of. So you've got to do things right, because maybe you don't want to look at it from the upside as a sales leader. Maybe you're saying, well, I don't know if we could generate revenue, but maybe you need to look at it as, hey, maybe I can stop us from losing revenue if we do proper training, right? Because you don't want to say the wrong thing on social. Even one time has screwed up a lot of revenue for companies and made long-term disasters.
All right. Well, good. Well, we're going to take a short break, come back with my guest, Jack Kosakowski. We'll be right back. Hi, this is Andy. I've worked with thousands of sales reps to teach them how to use my zero-time selling to boost their productivity and transform their results. Now, if you would like to learn proven strategies to become the difference maker in your sales, to help you open more doors, have more effective sales conversations with prospects, and close more orders, then my Zero Time Selling interactive training system is a fit for you. Now, I have a special offer for you today. Act now to take a no obligation, free trial of my Zero Time Selling interactive online training. It's incredibly simple to start. Just take out your cell phone now and text the word TRUST. That's TRUST to 96,000. Now, you have your smartphone ready? You're going to send a text to 96,000. That's a 9 and a 6 followed by 3 zeros. Now, enter the single word message TRUST and hit send. And you'll hear right back from me with instructions on how to sign up for your free trial of my Zero Time Selling interactive training. And welcome back to the show with my guest today, Jack Kosakowski. We're talking about social sales disruption, social selling, and I guess one of the topics I want to get into is again, the people listening to the show, sales leaders, CEOs, people who are managing this process, as well as salespeople that have to sort of implement it. But what are metrics that you can use as a manager to say, okay, we're having an impact with this. This is helping us. What are sort of the common metrics that they should be looking at using?
So, that just kind of depends on your industry, right? I mean, every industry is going to be a little bit different. There's not a one-size-fits-all social selling strategy. And if anybody ever tells you that, they're full of it. But, you really have to sit down as an organization and say, what do we need more of, right? What is going to make a better impression on our customer? What's going to get us into more conversations? What's going to get us into more efficient conversations, right? Quality over quantity. Maybe that's something we're looking to improve. Social would be a great place to do that. Then you can put the metrics behind that, right? Maybe it's, engagement. There's certain engagements or you want to try to stay away from the vanity metrics, but unfortunately in the beginning of the social selling process, as you're trying to get people to adopt, you kind of do have to focus on that a little bit.
So define what you mean by vanity metrics and which are those?
So vanity metrics would be like growing your network, right? Getting connected with more buyers, sharing more content, increasing your engagement. And there's different metrics and different technologies you can use. LinkedIn, for example, would be how many more conversations are you getting into? How many more people are you getting connected with? What does your network look like, on day one versus, 3 months in, right? Have you grown your connections by 250? Let's look at your connections. Are we connected with the right people? You can use that as a vanity metric. But really, at the end of the day, you want to do things that are revenue generating, right? So once you've gotten kind of past that vanity stage, then you want to look at things as more conversations, value touches. How many people are we connected to within a company in the middle of the sales process, right? How many times, and let me ask you this, Andy, how many times do sales reps go through halfway through the sales process and you ask them, hey, are you connected with this person on LinkedIn, right? Mm-hmm. And they're like, no. I just cringe because we got to look at social as another touch in the sales process, right? I think HireVue did a study and they said it took them on average 22 touches, phone, email, social, to get an appointment within, enterprise company. So right. What does that mean? It means that, 15 of those touches were social, right? 12 of those were value touches, which is they weren't asking for anything. They were just becoming visible and valuable as an advocate, right? Mm-hmm. And then they got to that 20-second touch, and then they were bringing in, it was taking them longer to touch these people to get the appointment. But what they were finding was that the sales cycles were shorter because when they were getting into that conversation, they had already been visible and valuable and done enough on the front end that they were able to ask for the buyer's time, I guess to say earn the buyer's time and business in the end. They were they were getting to the right people. They were using social not to connect with below the line like what they were doing before, which most organizations get stuck in their pipeline with. But it's saying, okay, we can get connected to multiple people, be visible and valuable, and we can leverage social as the tool to get us farther down the sales process when we have that first conversation.
So you've used the term visible and valuable several times. Why don't you explain that to the listeners?
So I'll give you an example. If you were in high school and you wanted to go out with your friends on Friday night, right? and you know that your mom didn't really like you to go over to this guy's house that you were trying to hang out with, what would you do? What would your strategy be? My strategy would be, I'm going to go do the dishes before my mom gets home. I'm going to go clean my room, which I never do, which she yells at me all the time. And then I'm going to put a little cherry on the top, and I'm going to go wash her car, right? And when she gets home, guess what? I'm going to look at her and let her, know, as I'm going to be as it's going to be visible already, when she walks past the car and goes, oh, wow, it's clean. And, goes past and sees a vacuum in my room and it's clean. And then I'm going to ask for something, right? It's the old adage, you got to give before you ask. And social allows you to do that. Let's give you an example. Let's say that I'm prospecting a CMO, and that CMO posts on LinkedIn, and I'm following it, I'm listening, and he writes a fantastic article, and I go in and I read it, and get the value out of it. All right motive, right? It's all about motive, so genuine motive. I learn, I educate, and then I engage with it. I say, hey, fantastic piece. I got, value out of point A, B, and C. Just one question. What do you think about this, right? Nothing about your product, nothing about you being in sales. And then I go and I share that. I tweet that on Twitter, tag his name. I share that on Google+, tag his name, and then, other channels if he's there. Immediately, what just happened, right? Do you think that CMO is not paying attention? I mean, unless he's a huge bigwig and he gets a ton of, amplification, which is not the case usually. Do you not think he's paying attention to who's being an advocate for his content, who's adding value through engagement, and who's sharing it to their networks for him, right? All that hard work and emotion that he puts into this content. You'd be out of your mind not to think that he's not paying attention to that. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to automatically get an appointment, right? There's a strategy behind that. But I can tell you that if he's seen your name on Twitter, share his content. He's seen your name on LinkedIn, engage and share his content. And he's seen you on Google+, your name, and saw that you shared. That's 3 touches, all of value. And then you got the 4th touch, which is engagement, right? You've literally started the ball rolling for him to know who you are and looking at you as an advocate versus a salesperson.
Okay. Is there more?
I mean, I'm just going to keep it simple for now, but I could go on for days about this, Andy. You know that.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's a great lesson for people who are saying, okay, how at a basic level, how you can use social to attract the attention and begin the engagement process with potential prospects.
Exactly. And you know what? Like I said, this isn't a silver bullet, right? But I can tell you that if you're doing this on a daily basis and a consistent basis, you're building a social pipeline, right? And you don't just go in for the kill, especially at the highest level. You're selling to the bigger companies. You're not going to go in for the kill and with the motive, oh, I shared his content, now I'm going to call him, right? Hey, CMO, I just shared your content, man. And you don't do that. But if you look at it almost like a nurture campaign, right? If you look at email, what do we do with clients now? We have marketing automation, and what do? We nurture them with value emails what we think is valuable, right? So we nurture them, and then all of a sudden they get to a lead score. And then we pass them over to sales because they're MQL'd, right? Marketing qualified. Well, social kind of is the same theory, right? You're, getting connected, you're staying visible, valuable, you're learning from this person, but you're doing it on a one-to-one basis, right? Versus the spray and pray or the pay and spray. This is really you as a sales rep putting in the time, putting in the effort to really understand who you're going after, who's your target buyer, who would actually get value from your time and vice versa, learning about them, and then effectively going and getting into conversation after you've shown that you at least care a little bit. And not only that, you're showing it because you know stuff about them. You've now just really turned into an advocate, first, and a salesperson second, and you're actually going in after you've earned the right to ask for their time or ask for their money. And it's not as simple as that, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Great stuff. So, all right, we're going to move to the last segment of the show. Got some questions I ask all my guests. I'm going to ask you the same questions, and we'll have a little fun with it. You ready? Mm-hmm. All right, first question. Hypothetical scenario. you've been hired as the new sales leader at a company whose sales have stalled out. They're really stuck in the mud. They need to get turned around quickly. Senior management's anxious for you to have a big impact quickly. So what 2 things would you do your first week on the job that would have the biggest impact?
I would talk to the top reps. That's the first thing I would do, right? And kind of evaluate what they're doing and what they're not doing. And then I would talk to the 2 bottom reps, some of the bottom reps. And I would kind of compare notes. And I truly believe that the only way that you know what's wrong with, what they're currently doing is by asking the people that are doing it, right? I don't think you can have any other strategy than that, other than to analyze, the people that are doing something that works, the people that are doing something that doesn't work, or the people that are it's kind of working but kind of not. Comparing notes and analyzing what you need to fix after that point. I don't think without that information you'd be able to even make a quick fix, right?
So is that one thing or 2 things?
Well, let's call that the first thing. And then the second thing, right, would be, sitting down and analyzing the industry. I think too many times you've got sales leaders in a position where they've had success and their resume looks really good, but these people they're stuck, right? They're stuck way back in time and they haven't caught up and they don't want to change. And so since they don't want to change, it affects everybody else from changing, right? So really figuring out, if you put me in control, is how can we change the fastest, be the most efficient, but not have it take a ton of time? Because I think that's a lot of the problem too, is you see these companies change all their processes and things. They go a little bit too heavy on change, and then it stalls, and sometimes it just screws up everything. So implementing little changes at a time, based on the feedback that I've got of what's working and what's not from all levels of the reps, from a success aspect.
Okay, good answer. So now we got some rapid fire questions for you. So in your own selling, what's your most powerful sales attribute?
Connecting. I connect. I have conversations all day. I am on the phone all day long, and guess how many sales conversations I'm having daily?
You tell me.
None, because I'm being proactive versus reactive in my pipeline. The more conversations I have with people, is a referral. It might not be the target buyer, but I just love to talk to people. I love to help people. I love to hear what people are going through. I like to self-educate through other people's experiences. And when you build your network and you do enough for people, it will self-generate, right? When you lead with value and you lead with the motive to inspire people on a daily basis on way more aspects of life than just your product, your network will grow and people will want to give you business. But not only that, people will want to refer you business. I can't tell you, most of my business is referrals, right? Because people are talking me up as an advocate to their network. And if you've built the right network of people, you can really build a powerful funnel. But it does take a lot of time and a lot of hard work and a lot of conversations.
Okay. So what's the one tool you use for managing your own sales that you can't live without?
Oh, man, let's see. I don't think I could live without Twitter.
Who's your sales role model?
Oh, man, my grandfather.
What did he sell?
He did direct sales. He sold MasterGuard, which is heat and smoke detectors, and he would walk into your home, knock on your door at 5 o'clock at night, and sell you $3,000 worth of heat and smoke detectors. And he became a millionaire without even graduating middle school, because his motto was, before you can understand and motivate anyone else, I have it right up here, you must first understand and motivate yourself. And he was a self-motivator, and he was just fired up. His internal fire was always lit to inspire others to be better. And he focused on others first and sales second.
Excellent. So what's the one book every salesperson should read?
You know what? I'm going to tell you right now, my absolute 100% favorite book is Not Taught by Jim Keenan. It will wake a traditional laggard mindset up.
Okay, it's a good recommendation. Jim was on the show for 2 episodes. We talked about the book called Not Taught. All right, here's a tough question. So what's your favorite music to listen to?
Oh man, it's changing, but I'm not gonna lie. Maybe I shouldn't admit this, but I'm a believer. Justin Bieber's new CD is just dirty.
Yeah, maybe you should. Maybe you shouldn't admit it.
Hey, man, you know what?
Hey, somebody's got to listen to it.
Man, this is who I am. I'm a believer. Okay, I believe in selling and his music.
Are you 21?
No, I'm 33 now.
All right, I'm just giving you a hard time. So, what's the first sales activity you do every day?
Check my calendar. Make sure I'm very good at forgetting things on my calendar if I don't look first thing. And then I check all my social channels and engage. I always engage. You will never tweet me or share something of mine or advocate for me without me engaging back. It's just what I do, and it's had a lot of impact on my success.
Okay, so last question is, what's the one question you get asked most frequently by salespeople?
How do I social sell? Where do I start?
And your answer is?
Keep it simple, stupid. Focus on doing everything on social, but selling. And think about, shift your mindset. If I was the buyer and I was going to get approached by a salesperson, what would that salesperson have to do first before I give them my time and especially my business?
All right. Good answer. All right. Well, I want to thank you for joining me. Today, my guest has been Jack Kosakowski. Jack, tell people how they can find out more about you.
Yeah, so you can go to jackkosakowski.com. I'm not going to spell it. You'll see it on
It'll be on the show notes page, right?
Yeah, I'm super active on Twitter, so tweet at me. I'd love to hear what your feedback is. You could argue with me. I'm okay. I can handle criticism if you want. But just be careful because I'm a witty dude. And tweet at me, or you can, send me an email, jack@creationagency.com if you want to have, chat. LinkedIn, I'm super active. I write a ton of content. I'm all over the place. Just Google it.
All right, good. Well, friends, remember, make it a part of your day every day to deliberately learn something new to help you accelerate your success. And subscribing to this podcast is an easy way to do that, because then you'll make sure you don't miss any of our conversations with top business experts like our guest today, Jack Kosakowski, who share their expertise about how to accelerate the growth of your business. So thanks for joining us, and until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone. Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard and want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.com. For more information about today's guest, visit my website at andypaul.com.